The rust-colored sky of Xylos stretched endlessly above Captain Eris Thorne as he crawled from the smoking wreckage of his scout ship. The acrid air burned his lungs even through his life support suit's filtration system. His head throbbed, and a sharp pain shot through his leg with every movement. The emergency beacon on his ship had been damaged beyond repair in the crash. This was not how his reconnaissance mission was supposed to end. Eris had been a seasoned scout for the Earth Alliance for over 15 years. He'd navigated asteroid fields, outrun pirate vessels, and mapped dozens of uncharted systems. But today, a sudden metallic dust storm had caught him off guard, disabling his ship's navigation systems and sending him plummeting to this desolate planet's surface. Xylos was supposed to be uninhabited, a dead world with nothing but ancient ruins and deadly metallic dust storms. It had once been home to a civilization, but according to Alliance records, any intelligent life had disappeared centuries ago. Now, it was just another haunted graveyard in the vast expanse of space. As Eris limped away from his wreckage, survival instinct kicked in. His suit's life support was functioning at minimal capacity. He had maybe 3 days before the oxygen recyclers failed completely. Water for 5 if he rationed carefully. The emergency beacon on his wrist communicator was functional but weak, a desperate whisper into the void of space that might never be heard. He needed shelter, and he needed it fast. Another dust storm was forming on the horizon, its rusty clouds swirling ominously. These storms were infamous for their razor-sharp metallic particles that could tear through even military-grade shielding given enough time. Eris scanned the landscape, looking for anything usable. The terrain was barren, dominated by twisted metallic formations and the skeletal remains of bizarre architectural structures that must have once been magnificent. In the distance, he spotted what looked like a cave entrance partially hidden by collapsed ruins. It was his best option. Dragging his injured leg, Eris made his way toward the cave, occasionally glancing back at the approaching storm. The entrance was smaller than he'd anticipated, requiring him to duck and squeeze through. Inside, the temperature dropped noticeably, providing welcome relief from the scorching heat outside. The cave seemed to be part natural formation and part artificial structure, as if someone had expanded a natural cavity into living quarters long ago. Strange symbols adorned some of the walls, faintly illuminated by the dim light filtering through the entrance. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, Eris froze. There, at the far end of the chamber, was a small creature attempting to pry open what looked like an ancient power cell. The being was tiny, no more than a foot tall, with delicate limbs and a slender build. Its skin had a faint greenish-blue luminescence, and 2 large amber eyes dominated its face. Long, flexible ears twitched atop its head, instantly swiveling toward Eris as he stepped forward. The creature's eyes widened in pure terror. It let out a high-pitched shriek in a language his translator couldn't immediately process, backing away until it hit the wall behind it. The being was trembling violently, those large eyes fixed on Eris as if he were death incarnate. Then, his translator finally caught up, deciphering the panicked words. "Please don't eat me." Eris remained perfectly still, stunned by both the existence of the creature and its bizarre first words. An intelligent species on Xylos? Nothing in the Alliance records mentioned surviving natives. And eat it? Why would it think that? He slowly raised his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "I won't hurt you," he said calmly, letting his translator convert his words. The creature only pressed itself harder against the wall, its tiny chest heaving with rapid breaths. Its luminescent skin pulsed brighter with fear. "I'm Eris," he tried again, pointing to himself. "I crashed here. My ship." He gestured vaguely in the direction of the wreckage. "I'm not here to harm anyone." The creature didn't seem convinced. Its eyes darted to the entrance, calculating an escape route. Eris sighed and carefully lowered himself to sit on the cave floor, wincing at the pain in his leg. By making himself smaller and less threatening, he hoped to calm the terrified being. He noticed the ancient power cell the creature had been trying to access and realized it was likely here searching for resources, just as he was. "Look," he said, reaching slowly into his emergency pack and pulling out a ration bar. He broke off a small piece and set on the ground between them, then scooted back. "Food. For you." The creature stared at the offering, conflict evident in its expression. Hunger warred with fear. A sudden roar from outside signaled the arrival of the dust storm. The cave entrance darkened as the rusty cloud enveloped the area. They were both trapped here now, at least until the storm passed. The small being's ears flattened against its head at the sound. It glanced nervously between Eris, the cave entrance, and the food. After several long moments, it inched forward, keeping its eyes fixed on the human. In a lightning-quick movement, it snatched the ration piece and retreated to its corner. Eris allowed himself a small smile. It was a start. As the storm raged outside, man and alien sat in uneasy silence, watching each other across the dim cave. The creature nibbled carefully at the ration, its large eyes never leaving Eris for more than a moment. Night fell on Xylos, and the cave grew darker. The creature's luminescent skin provided the only light now, a soft blue-green glow that cast ghostly shadows on the ancient walls. Eris's suit was equipped with lights, but he refrained from using them, not wanting to frighten the being further. The pain in his leg had grown worse. During the crash, a piece of shrapnel had pierced his suit and embedded itself in his calf. The suit's automatic sealing mechanism had prevented decompression, but the wound was beginning to throb in the damp air of the cave. Eris grimaced as he tried to reach the medical kit in his pack. The movement sent a spike of pain through his leg, drawing an involuntary grunt. The creature's ears perked up, its head tilting slightly as it observed Eris struggling with the wound. For the first time, its expression showed something other than fear, perhaps curiosity or concern. Eris finally managed to extract the medkit and began treating his leg as best he could in the dim light. He removed the piece of shrapnel, applied antiseptic, and wrapped the wound with a pressure bandage. All the while, he could feel those amber eyes watching his every move. When he finished, Eris looked up to find the creature had crept slightly closer, its bioluminescence illuminating more of the cave. It was studying him with an intense, analytical gaze. "See?" Eris said softly. "I'm injured too. Just try to survive like you." The creature's ears twitched at his words, though Eris couldn't tell if it understood or was simply reacting to the sound of his voice. To further demonstrate his peaceful intentions, Eris slowly removed his sidearm and placed it far to his side, while out of reach. The gesture wasn't lost on the small being, whose posture relaxed incrementally. As the night wore on, Eris dozed intermittently, exhaustion from the crash and his injury finally catching up with him. Each time he opened his eyes, he found the creature in a slightly different position, sometimes closer, sometimes further away, but always watching. By morning, the storm had died down to a dull howl. The creature had retreated to its corner again, but the panic terror of the previous day had faded to cautious wariness. Progress of a sort. Eris offered another piece of his ration, placing it halfway between them. This time, the creature approached with slightly more confidence, though still ready to bolt at any sudden movement. Just as it reached for the food, a low rumble shook the cave. Dust and small rocks showered down from the ceiling. The storm outside must have weakened the cave's structural integrity. Without thinking, Eris lunged forward, grabbing the creature and rolling to the side just as a chunk of ceiling crashed down where it had been standing. The movement sent daggers of pain through his injured leg, but he managed to shield the tiny being with his body. For a frozen moment, they lay together in the dust, the creature trembling in his hands, its luminescence pulsing wildly. Then, to Eris's surprise, it didn't flee. Instead, it looked from the fallen rocks to Eris's face with undisguised confusion and shock. Eris carefully set the creature down and scooted back, giving it space. "Sorry," he said. "Didn't want you crushed." The being stared at the rock pile, then back at Eris. Something fundamental had shifted in its perception. The ceiling trembled again, raining down smaller debris. This time, the creature moved toward what appeared to be a safer corner of the cave. After a moment's hesitation, it gestured for Eris to follow. They settled in the new spot as the cave continued to groan ominously around them. The creature reached into a small pouch it carried and pulled out a strange, glowing leaf. It held the leaf out toward Eris, gesturing to his injured leg. Eris understood. He extended his leg carefully, and the small being approached with obvious trepidation. It gently placed the leaf over his bandaged wound. Almost immediately, a cooling sensation spread through his calf, easing the throbbing pain. "Thank you," Eris said, genuinely touched by the gesture. Their eyes met, and for the first time, the fear in the creature's gaze had given way to something else, the first tentative spark of trust. The storm finally subsided the next day. The cave entrance cleared, revealing the rust-colored landscape once more. Eris's leg felt remarkably better thanks to the mysterious leaf. He tested his weight on it and found the pain had diminished significantly. The creature, which had kept its distance again during the night, approached Eris with hesitant steps. It pointed to the cave entrance, then to itself. "You want to leave?" Eris asked. The creature nodded, surprising Eris with its apparent understanding. It then pointed to Eris and made a following motion. "You want me to come with you?" Another nod. Eris had little choice. His ship was wrecked, his supplies limited, and this being clearly knew how to survive on this hostile world. Following seemed the logical option. Outside, the landscape had been transformed by the storm. New dunes of metallic dust had formed, and parts of the ancient ruins had shifted or collapsed. The creature navigated the terrain with practiced ease, occasionally looking back to ensure Eris was following. They traveled for hours, with the being leading them through a labyrinthine path among the ruins. It avoided certain areas deliberately, once physically pulling Eris back when he started to step onto what looked like solid ground. Later, he noticed the telltale shimmer of a sinkhole where he would have stepped. Eventually, they reached what could only be described as a hidden oasis. Nestled among protective ruins was a small area where glowing plants similar to the healing leaf grew in clusters around a tiny spring of clear water. The arrangement seemed too deliberate to be natural. This was someone's home. The creature gestured for Eris to enter, its earlier fear now replaced by a cautious hospitality. The oasis was a marvel of adaptation. Ancient technology had been repurposed to filter water and protect the area from dust storms. The glowing plants provided light, heat, and apparently medicinal properties. There were small containers filled with what looked like food stores, and a sleeping area nestled in the most protected corner. As Eris examined the ingenious setup, the creature watched him with growing confidence. It approached and tapped its chest. "Lyra," it said in a melodic voice. Eris blinked in surprise. "Your name is Lyra?" The creature, Lyra, nodded. "I'm Eris," he responded, pointing to himself again. Lyra repeated his name, the syllables slightly elongated by her accent. Progress indeed. Over the next few days, communication improved steadily. Lyra helped Eris repair parts of his suit while he worked on his emergency beacon, hoping to boost its signal. His translator became better at interpreting her language, and Lyra proved to be a quick study with basic human phrases. During a meal of strange but edible oasis fruits, Lyra finally began to explain. Her people, the Cthar, had once been a thriving civilization on Xylos. Then came what she called the Great Shadow, some kind of natural disaster that devastated their world. While struggling to rebuild, they encountered the Fire Giants, visitors from the stars who further destroyed their civilization and hunted the Cthar. "They take us," Lyra explained haltingly through the translator. "For eat. 4. Study. Few escape. Hide. Generations in shadows." Eris felt a chill run down his spine. Her people had been treating him like a monster because, to them, humans and other spacefaring species were monsters. "Not all visitors are the same," Eris tried to explain. "My people, the Earth Alliance, we don't hunt other species." Lyra's expression remained skeptical, but she continued her story. The Cthar now lived in scattered hiding places across Xylos. Their numbers were few, their technology largely lost. They survived by scavenging and remaining hidden from the occasional ships that still landed on their world. "Why did you help me?" Eris asked. "If you thought I would eat you?" Lyra's ears twitched thoughtfully. "Old stories," she said after a moment. "Some speak of kind giants. Rare, very rare, when you save from falling rocks. Remember stories." Eris nodded, beginning to understand. Amid all the horror stories, there must have been a few accounts of benevolent visitors, enough to make Lyra take a chance when he demonstrated kindness. As they talked, Lyra accidentally brushed against an ancient device partially buried in the oasis floor. It hummed to life, projecting a faint hologram into the air between them. The holographic scene showed armored soldiers rounding up small, terrified Cthar. Eris's blood ran cold as he recognized the uniforms. They were similar to early Earth Alliance designs, though with subtle differences. Lyra froze, her eyes locked on the hologram, then on Eris's suit. Her luminescence pulsed with renewed fear. "Liars," she hissed, backing away. "You are them. You are them." Eris raised his hands. "No, Lyra, wait. That's not me. That's not us. Not anymore, or maybe not even my people at all." He studied the uniforms more carefully. These could be frontier coalition troops from the early expansion era, or even Martian separatists. The uniforms are similar but different. Lyra wasn't listening. She retreated to the furthest corner of the oasis, her trust shattered by the ghostly images from the past. Eris didn't pursue her. He sat heavily beside the still-playing hologram, watching the atrocities with a growing sense of shame. Regardless of which human faction had done this, it was humans who had terrorized her people. No wonder she had been so afraid. The hologram eventually flickered out, leaving the oasis in silence except for the soft bubbling of the spring. Eris remained where he was, giving Lyra space while he processed what he'd seen. Hours passed. Night fell. The glowing plants intensified their light in the darkness, casting eerie shadows. Lyra remained in her corner, watching Eris warily. Eris spoke into the silence. "I can't change what happened to your people, Lyra. I can only be sorry for it. And I can promise you that I am not like those in the recording." He paused. "You've seen me for days now. If I wanted to hurt you, I could have. Instead, you helped me, and I helped you." He saw her ears twitch, knew she was listening despite her fear. "I'll leave tomorrow if you want me to," he continued. "But I hope you'll let me stay. We can help each other survive." No response came from the shadowy corner. Exhausted physically and emotionally, Eris eventually dozed off against the wall of the oasis. He awoke to the sound of movement. Opening his eyes slightly, he saw Lyra approaching cautiously in the dim light of dawn. She placed a small container of water near him, then quickly retreated. The gesture gave him hope. Days passed in this new, fragile arrangement. Lyra kept her distance, but continued to leave food and water for Eris. He, in turn, worked on repairing his emergency beacon and other salvageable equipment from his suit, hoping to establish some form of communication with passing ships. He would often explain what he was doing out loud, even though Lyra remained in her corner, knowing she was listening and perhaps learning. On the 5th day after the hologram incident, Eris's motion sensors picked up unusual activity outside the oasis. Something large was circling their sanctuary, multiple somethings, in fact. "Lyra," he called softly, the first time he directly addressed her since the incident. "We have company." Her head emerged from the shadows, ears alert. Eris checked his sensors again. At least 5 large life forms. Too big to be Cthar. Some kind of predators. Lyra's expression confirmed his suspicion. She whispered something his translator caught as metal stalkers, apparently some kind of native predatory species that had adapted to the post-apocalyptic landscape of Xylos. "They hunt by heat and movement," she explained reluctantly, approaching Eris for the first time in days. "Oasis usually hidden, but my crash and our movements might have attracted them," Eris finished grimly. Lyra nodded. Eris checked his sidearm. It had enough charge for a few shots, but not enough to handle 5 large predators. "We need to fortify this place," he said, already scanning the oasis for defensive possibilities. Without discussion, they fell into a partnership born of necessity. Eris used parts from his suit to create motion-triggered alarms, while Lyra set up what looked like plant-based traps around the perimeter. They worked mostly in silence, but the hostility had been replaced by focused cooperation. As night fell, the sensors showed the creatures drawing closer. Eris could hear scratching and sniffing at the hidden entrances to the oasis. "They're trying to find a way in," he whispered. Lyra nodded grimly. Her luminescence had dimmed to almost nothing. A defense mechanism, Eris realized, to avoid detection. The first metal stalker broke through shortly before midnight. A nightmarish creature with a sleek, metallic exoskeleton and multiple limbs ending in razor-sharp points. It moved with surprising silence for its size, about as large as an earth wolf. Eris's alarm triggered, and he fired a precise shot that sent the creature reeling backward with a screech. But the sound only seemed to excite the others, which increased their efforts to breach the oasis. A second creature slipped through another entrance that Eris hadn't noticed. It moved directly toward Lyra, who had frozen in terror at its appearance. Without hesitation, Eris threw himself between Lyra and the predator. The creature's clawed limb caught him across the arm, tearing through his suit and into flesh. Eris grunted in pain, but managed to kick the creature backward into one of Lyra's plant traps. The plant immediately wrapped around the metal stalker, constricting and secreting some kind of paralyzing agent that caused the creature to convulse before going still. Eris had no time to marvel at the effectiveness of the trap. More metal stalkers were breaking through, and his injured arm made aiming difficult. Then, something unexpected happened. Lyra darted forward, no longer paralyzed by fear. She moved with astonishing agility, leading one of the creatures into another trap. When a particularly large stalker, presumably the pack leader, lunged toward Eris's injured side, Lyra actually drew its attention deliberately, dancing just out of reach until it followed her to the most elaborate trap in the oasis. The plant mechanism activated, completely enveloping the pack leader. The remaining stalkers, sensing the defeat of their alpha, retreated with mechanical shrieks. In the sudden silence that followed, Eris and Lyra stood panting, looking at each other with newfound respect. "Thank you," Eris said, wincing as he examined the gash on his arm. Lyra approached him without fear now. She gestured to his wound and then to her healing plants. Eris nodded gratefully and allowed her to treat him. As she applied the healing leaves, Lyra spoke softly. "Them in light picture," she said, referring to the hologram. "Not you. You. Different." The simple statement meant everything. In the weeks that followed, Eris and Lyra developed a true partnership. The barriers between them fell away as they reinforced the oasis, hunted for supplies, and shared stories of their respective worlds. Eris learned more about the Cathar, their once-advanced technology, their harmonious connection with Xylos' ecosystem before the Great Shadow, their art and music. Lyra, in turn, asked endless questions about Earth and the Alliance, fascinated by descriptions of oceans and forests so different from her barren homeworld. Eris managed to repair his emergency beacon to a functional state, though the signal was weak. Day after day, it sent its plea for rescue into space with no response. Then, nearly 2 months after his crash, the beacon received an answer. A small Alliance patrol vessel had picked up the signal and dispatched a rescue shuttle to Xylos. When Eris told Lyra the news, her reaction wasn't what he expected. Instead of sharing his relief, she retreated, her luminescence dimming with anxiety. "More giants coming," she said quietly. Eris understood her fear immediately. "They're coming to rescue me, Lyra. They won't hurt you, I promise." She looked unconvinced. "Hologram giants. They're not like that anymore," Eris insisted, then paused. "And even if some are, I won't let them near you. You have my word." Lyra studied his face, searching for deception. Finally, she asked, "What happens to Lyra when Eris leaves?" The question struck Eris like a physical blow. He hadn't fully considered what would happen after his rescue. The thought of leaving Lyra alone on this desolate world suddenly seemed unthinkable. "You could come with me," he suggested carefully. "See my world." Lyra's eyes widened. Leave Xylos. Only if you want to, Eris hastened to add. But yes, you could come with me. As my friend and guest, not like in the hologram. The rescue shuttle arrived the next day, landing at the coordinates Eris had transmitted. He and Lyra watched its descent from a hidden vantage point near the oasis. Stay here until I signal you, Eris told her. Let me speak to them first. Lyra nodded, though every line of her small body radiated tension. Eris limped toward the shuttle as its ramp descended. Two figures emerged, a young male lieutenant and an older female science specialist, according to their uniforms. Captain Thorne, the lieutenant called out. Lieutenant Cole, Earth Alliance Rescue Division. This is Specialist Eva Rostova. Thank God you're alive, sir. When your reconnaissance vessel disappeared, Command feared the worst. Eris accepted their salutes with a nod. Glad to see you, Lieutenant. Specialist. As you can see, I've had better days. Eva Rostova stepped forward, medical scanner in hand. You're injured, Captain. Let me examine you before we attempt extraction. As she treated his still-healing wounds, Eris carefully explained his situation, including the fact that he had discovered intelligent life on Xylos. He deliberately omitted details about the hologram or the history of exploitation, focusing instead on Lyra's help in his survival. Lieutenant Cole frowned. Sir, with all due respect, Alliance protocols are clear about unclassified alien life forms. They need to be properly documented and studied before any consideration of extraction. The quarantine procedures alone would. She's coming with us, Eris interrupted firmly. As my personal guest. Cole's frown deepened. Captain, I cannot authorize the transport of an unknown alien species without proper containment. And she saved my life, Lieutenant. Eris cut in again, his voice hardening. Multiple times. She's intelligent, peaceful, and has more right to be on this ship than any of us. The lieutenant's face reddened. Sir, the regulations explicitly state. I don't give a damn about regulations, Eris said quietly. Either she comes with us, or I stay here. Your choice, Lieutenant. Cole opened his mouth to argue further, but Eva Rostova placed a restraining hand on his arm. Perhaps we could meet this being first, she suggested diplomatically. I have authority to conduct field assessments for first contact protocols. Cole hesitated, then nodded stiffly. Very well. A preliminary assessment only. Eris turned and signaled toward the rocks where Lyra was hiding. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the small Kthar emerged and approached the group, her luminescence pulsing nervously. Cole's hand instinctively moved toward his sidearm, but Eris shot him a warning glance. Eva Rostova, however, crouched down to Lyra's level, her eyes wide with wonder rather than fear. Remarkable, she breathed, a bioluminescent humanoid species, perfectly adapted to this environment. She looked up at Eris. She's beautiful. Lyra stopped a few paces away, her eyes shifting between the newcomers and Eris. It's okay, Eris assured her. They're friends. Or at least, they will be. The last part was directed at Cole with unmistakable meaning. Eva extended her hand slowly, palm up, in a non-threatening gesture. Hello, she said softly. I'm Eva. Lyra looked to Eris, who nodded encouragingly. Tentatively, she stepped forward and placed her tiny hand on Eva's finger. Lyra, she said. Eva smiled warmly. Hello, Lyra. Thank you for taking care of our friend. The moment of connection was broken by Cole clearing his throat. Specialist Rostova, your assessment? Eva stood, her expression professional, but her eyes still bright with excitement. In my expert opinion, Lyra represents a sentient, intelligent species with a clear capacity for complex social interaction and problem-solving. She appears to pose no biological threat that standard decontamination protocols can't address. She turned to Eris, and Captain Thorne's testimony regarding her assistance constitutes a preliminary positive first contact scenario. Cole looked like he wanted to object, but knew he was outranked in this particular matter. Very well, he conceded reluctantly. The alien can accompany us under your supervision, Specialist Rostova. Lyra, Eris corrected firmly. Her name is Lyra. Cole nodded stiffly. Lyra may accompany us, subject to standard quarantine procedures upon arrival at headquarters. Eris knelt beside Lyra, whose ears were twitching rapidly as she tried to follow the conversation. They say you can come, he explained simply, if you still want to. Lyra's large eyes searched his face, then looked to the shuttle, then back to Eris. Fear and curiosity warred in her expression. Finally, she nodded slowly. Lyra come, with Eris. The boarding process was tense, but uneventful. Cole maintained a professional distance. Eva couldn't contain her scientific enthusiasm, and Eris stayed close to Lyra, interpreting and reassuring as needed. As the shuttle lifted off, Lyra pressed herself against the viewport, watching her homeworld shrink beneath them. Her luminescence pulsed with complex emotions Eris could only guess at: fear, excitement, sorrow, perhaps even hope. One day, Eris said softly, "We could come back, not to run or hide, but to look for more of your people, to tell your story to the galaxy." Lyra turned to him, her amber eyes glistening with what might have been tears. She reached out and wrapped her slender fingers around his thumb, the closest she could come to holding his hand. "Thank you," she whispered, "my giant friend." As the shuttle broke through Xylos's atmosphere and the rust-colored world receded into the blackness of space, Eris knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, Alliance bureaucracy, scientific curiosity, cultural adjustments, they would face them together. A human and a Kthar, against all odds, against history itself, had found understanding where there should have been only fear. The universe, it seemed, still had room for unexpected friendships to bloom among the stars.